regional contrasts in eSports, Xsports and traditional sports betting.
Welcome our next panel to the stage, please. Welcome.
One, two, one, two. So, hello everyone. I'm happy to see you. Our panel is called Regional Contrasts in eSports, Xsports, and Traditional Sports Betting. I hope it will have some meaningful thoughts and outtakes and insights. So my name is Eugene Ravdin. I'm communications and marketing for a betting affiliate company, MightyTips, based in Riga. And our distinguished panelists today are Harmen Brenninkmeijer, managing partner at NYCE International, István Döbrei, sports diplomacy expert, and Vinicius Moraes de Carvalho, investment partner at Ikigai Ventures. Guys, if you could please shortly introduce yourself and tell what is it that you're doing and just some key relevant facts.
Thanks, appreciate it. NYCE International is focused around pushing a lot of gaming product around the world. We have about 46 companies that we represent, and we have a sales team of about 30 people around the world that basically is in constant contact on every continent with the different operators. We also have a lot of side effects where people sell from an operator back into, let's say, suppliers, one after the other. So as a result, we have a lot of different, let's say we come across a lot of different products and different markets and different situations. So therefore, I'm quite pleased to be here. Thank you.
And good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. My name is István, and I'm dealing with sports diplomacy, representing sports innovation projects on 5 continents in the world. And we are creating value through sports, through traditional sports, between sports federations, countries, companies, governments. And that's the main point.
I'm Vinicius. I'm an investment partner at Ikigai Ventures. We have a very unique hybrid thesis where we invest in startups, but we also create companies within the fund, similar to an incubation model. One of the companies that we create, and we are very proud of it, it's right in front of us, Wicked Games.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's jump to the questions, and just the basic stuff comes first. Let's speak a little bit about what are the key differences between eSports, Xsports, and traditional sports betting in terms of bettors' behavior, in terms of strategies, just whatever comes to your mind. The key differences between the 3 topics we're discussing here from your point of view.
Okay, basically eSports we're familiar with. The games are being played, let's say, in a theater type environment, in an arena. People play against one another. You either work through scouts or you take the data feeds directly under contract. Most of it is with scouts, to be honest, because most of the publishers are not willing to take and supply the data feeds. Because there is a lot of underage gaming involved, right? A lot of underage, players involved. And obviously you want to stay away from, understanding exactly how the infrastructure works. I was in South Korea last week, in Seoul, and they had a very large eSports event, and it was unbelievable, the action that was taking place, but the betting was all done in the gray market. All, let's say, not visible to, let's say, the organizers, nor, anybody that was there. But there was a lot of action going on. South Korea is a big gray market, and is very, very interested in making those bets, right? It's one of the biggest esports markets in the world. If we look at export is high risk, right? That's where, people do the crazy sports, no matter if it is related to the skiing, if it is related to jumping out of helicopters and then start skiing, or if it is, anything very specific to car racing or whatever you can imagine. Those sports are very prone to issues with match fixing, so you got to be quite careful. And as a result, you don't see that much of the Xsports betting yet. And then, of course, we have the traditional sports. I don't need to enter that. All of you are very familiar with that.
For me, coming from the traditional sports world, I find it's really interesting that how the sports betting, the core views of sports betting is connected to the basic sports actually. So if you're talking about how much influence the different demographics or the age groups or the technology development of the different regions have on the sports betting market, I think these are the key figures most of the companies should focus on to create value and develop income.
The way I see it, traditional sports betting, we already have, let's say, a history and tremendously data point and betting strategies and so on and so forth. On a nutshell, I'm sorry, eSports, I think it's the growing market at this moment, and it offers new types of betting, something that it has not historically been done. So you're kind of creating and going along with, in a sense. It also demands some education from the market, and particularly Xsports for me, as someone that actually practices Xsports, I'm really keen into it because it depends on several factors, and I'll give you an example. If you're betting on surfing, the conditions of the sea change pretty much every 2 or 3 days. So you might be betting to someone that might be favored for big waves, but if the waves are smaller, they are not going to be favored anymore. So it's very unpredictable. And yeah, to me, those are the key difference and the key engagement that I have.
Yeah, I like the idea of, let's say, when you start talking about the Xsports, I think that in Xsports we can see a lot of action. I mean, you're from Brazil. It's going to be a mega market. I can imagine that, something like Xsport, with its enormous attraction to watch, could actually become quite an interesting sport. But I think what's important is that, the infrastructure is set up correctly in order to make sure that the match fixing, is not taking place, right?
Yeah, following something kind of related to this, like I was already, I surf, and I was already a surfer when surfing started to have fantasy sports and surf. And following up the forums and discussion panel, it was so hard for people to pick up the actual, the highest chance for the market, especially because of this. There's so many moving factors on it. And I think it's very engaging, but it does require some knowledge and education from the spectator or the bettor.
Harmen, I wanted just to ask you a little bit more specific question. If I understood you right, then match fixing is one of the issues hampering the growth of eSports and Xsports betting. Did I get it right? And if I did, I know that in traditional sports, the match fixing is being fought against, is being battled, and I wanted to ask you, what are the measures to do that in eSports and Xsports?
In eSports, there's quite a bit already happening. So I'm pretty comfortable at the moment with, let's say, what the various associations are doing and the way they're fighting it. So, even with the tournaments, etc. Because even if it is not for betting or for, let's say, the real gambling, there's still a lot of betting taking place, right? No matter if it is, the kids working against one another, if it is, teams against one another, etc. There's still a lot of betting taking place, even, on forums and in areas where there is no control. So I think the match fixing in eSports is very well recognized and very well dealt with. I think with the Xsports, they have to learn. It's a complete new experience. And most of those sports aren't big enough in order to really pay for that infrastructure. So I think that's still a very serious issue that needs to be debated. And I think they could learn from certain organizations that have done a lot of this data feed provision quite well within those areas, within those sports.
Okay, let's move to the cultural differences across regions. We all know that they influence a lot the choice of traditional sports, the favorite traditional sports in various countries, in various regions. So how do cultural differences across regions influence the popularity and betting behavior in esports and Xsports, in your view? István, you want to start on this?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was just in my note. Yes, so I think it's really interesting to see if we are talking about the cultural differences. We could talk about the whole world because, you know, differentiating between Asia, Europe, and America. But if we are just focusing on Europe, I think there is already a huge difference between the Western and the Eastern side. I mean, if you're talking about how how the traditional sports were already developed and how much they could focus on, while in the socialist part was not so, developed betting on these sports. Now what we see is the Western side regarding about the risk. They are not taking such a high risk comparing to the Eastern side of Europe, where in betting people are ready to take higher risk because they are not about for fun and entertainment like the Western part does, but it's more for, you know, financial possibility to gain some money. And it's already changed a lot, the situation.
Yeah, to me, the regional difference, it plays out to the timeline as a user, let's say. For instance, you can pretty much see the difference in traditional sports, for instance, football. You have a data line, you have a timeline that you've been tracking this, and you can understand the actual regional difference of each. But when it's something so new, let's say, such as eSports and Xsports, this is still being built. Of course, you can start to see some points that certain markets are taking, but this is still being built throughout the line. I think maybe in 5 to 10 years' time, we will have a clear perception on how each region is betting according to the sports as well.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think two things are important: the economical side and the technological side. If the technology isn't there, if the bandwidth isn't there in order to really show the action of, let's say, especially with exports, then it just loses a lot of value. So, you know, then it's not really going to take off. But if it is there, it's exciting. It's really interesting to watch. And then it becomes much more an interesting sport to basically start betting on. So I think that's an essential part, you know, related to, let's say, how export has to, let's say, develop and move. With the esports, of course, it's much easier because the streaming is already there. We have fantastic channels, you know, through Twitch and others. The scouts are in the, you know, normally in the audience, and they're the ones that are already looking at it. They can tell you exactly where to watch it. You don't even need to watch it on the, you know, sports betting app, you know, yourself. You can watch it on Twitch and then place the bets indirectly. So I think in that sense, it is really important to see that infrastructure. It will grow for sure. Esports, absolutely. Exports, a lot of work needs to be done.
Let's talk specifics a little bit. From your experience, what regions in Eastern Europe are leading in esports and exports betting? Vinny, if you can comment on that.
I would say probably Ukraine, I think, has a very good esports community. The Balkans as well. I wouldn't say that for export, to be honest, not on my knowledge, but for export, I'd say they are not as developed in a sense as, for instance, US market or Western Europe market that have a stronger tradition on this. But I would also like to raise one other key element which I think we sometimes forget is that it's not only the regional difference, but also the age difference between the types of betting as well. And across the board, I'd say, regardless of the region, the behavior of younger generation in betting tends to be way different than the behavior of the old generation. And you can draw parallels between young generations in Eastern Europe, Western Europe, US, and so on. Like the more of accelerated kind of action that not so deeply engaged on the 90 minutes of the game, but really wanting to be a bet on a particular specific thing that is going to happen within the game, the volume of the betting and so on. So I think that's, to me, that would be the main key differentiator, actually the age group rather than the regional aspect itself.
István.
Yeah, I think to better understand this question, again, we need to go back to the core values and historical traditions regarding the sports in each countries. Because if you're talking about the western part of Europe, here around, the sports, basic traditional sports like football, they are like dominating. In those countries which are in the eastern part of Europe, we are talking about, like, for example, Hungary or even about Latvia, where the traditional sports are not on that high level that can catch all the attention, but there is even a slight little demand for other new things like extreme sports. We were just discussing that there is already a traditional extreme and urban sports event in Latvia, which is already well known all around the world. But if you're talking about esports, I think in the region, Hungary is among the top 6 leaders in esports betting, and in Hungary itself, the esports on the general betting list, which is like traditional, extreme, and esports betting, esports is on the 4th place after football, basketball, and tennis. So it's really like growing, and I think this comes back to the core values and the sports history of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I second that. What Veronica said, about the age, definitely it's a younger population. Eastern Europe has far more, many more, let's say, younger gamblers. They start at a younger age and they bet heavier. And my philosophy or theory has always been that that's because, growing, when you start making money and you start building up your life, you take more risks in order to basically get what you really want. Versus in the West, where you basically already start thinking you're being educated with, okay, I got to start saving for a mortgage, I got to make a down payment for a house, I got to make sure that I pay this for my car, etc. In Eastern Europe, it's a whole different philosophy. So there is much more, let's say, disposable income readily available to be played. So that basically means they're going to look at sports where they feel they have an upside. The upside on traditional sports isn't that much, right? Because they're playing against the whole world, odds are pretty well set, etc. With esports, and especially with Xsports, now they can find a niche where they can take a much higher risk and where they can see like, okay, now I can go out because I think this is what's going to happen. And that's why the player behavior is quite different. And definitely it's the Ukraine that's, absolutely leading in a lot of this, but also Russia. Let's not underestimate the amount of, let's say, esports betting that happens in Russia. And then, let's, look at, for example, especially Bulgaria, which is extremely prone to, let's say, the specialism of the esports and, let's say, the expertise in what they have developed and where they are. So between Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, Bulgaria, I would say that's where the most of the actions are. For export, the field is still to be, let's say, seen, but again, Ukraine, Russia will lead, in my view.
Okay, so Vinny, you mentioned that the main difference is not maybe the regions, but the age groups of the users. So I just wanted to go a little bit deeper into that. You mentioned that they want everything to happen fast, so they don't long bets, they want in play, they want micro betting, right? Then the volume of the bets is lesser. What are the other differences that we can correlate to demographics of the ages and maybe to the regions again, but mainly to the ages?
Better accumulation?
Yeah, I would take the example, like the fact that, for instance, this younger generation is not, let's put it this way, not making as much money as the old generation.
Exactly.
And that plays a big factor on how they bet, on how they're willing to bet. And also might be correlated to this, I'm purely speaking on top of my mind now. But for instance, in Brazil, at the moment, since the economy is not doing very well, a lot of young people are betting as a way of making more money. They are believing that betting is going to bring them a new source of income. So young generations in Brazil, where I'm from, they are betting like crazy. I think it's the same in the US from what I can read on the data. In Europe, to be honest, I'm not very well versed in this particular fact, but I do believe it's kind of the same.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, what I can just see here in Hungary and around Eastern Europe is, that in esports and esports betting, it's the numbers are constantly growing thanks to the better adaptation to the digital platforms and expansion of the tournaments. And of course, the average age we are talking about here around 19 and 25, and as we discussed, they are like always more ready to take the higher risk.
Do you have anything to add, Harmen? And I think we'll be wrapping up because we're out of time.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Eugene.
Thanks again. Thanks to our distinguished and smart and wise panelists. And thank you for listening.